And what's up, guys? Welcome into the Rath Learning Curve here on rotocurve.com for Thursday night. We're going to be recording the video for Week 4 college fantasy football on DraftKings and FanDuel. We're going to hit the early slate. Before we get into that, as we always do with the videos, just want to make sure that you jump on over to rotocurve.com, sign up for a free account, get access to all of our free content, video, written, forums, chat room, all of our analytical tools, our predictive tools, our stats. We have DraftKings and FanDuel NFL stats that really not a lot of other people have. We have Vegas lines. We have predictive tools like touchdown predictor. We have player ratings. Everything that you need to know to get started in daily fantasy sports, especially for college and NFL, is all there at rotocurve.com. And once again, it's 100% free. Some of the best minds in the industry giving you free content and the best way that you can build a bankroll in DFS. So let's hop into it tonight. Let's go into the week 4 college fantasy football, the early slate, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. Now, here's the thing. It is a big slate this week, so we're going to have a few more picks. There are a lot of high-scoring games. There's some great matchups. So this is more of an expanded slate as far as picks go this week. You're going to notice, you're going to say, hey, he normally doesn't give out that many. The reason being is there's just a lot of games and a lot of potential plays, so we'll break all those down. Okay, guys, as we always start, we kind of have the matchups here on the left-hand side. We have the Vegas data, the favorite, projected, the dog, and then also for the early slate, we got those marked as E. We know the time of the game. And then I'm going to expand it out a little bit. I'm going to show you the actual rankings. Now, again, I'm still going with the preseason rankings of Phil Steele. We're going to be moving over to take kind of a little bit of the preseason ranks and then apply the in-season data. The reason why I'm not using in-season data exclusively right now is a lot of these teams have played games against inferior opponents or FBS versus FCS type teams. I don't like taking those statistics into play. It skews the data quite a bit. So kind of what we're doing here is, each individual's team, we do the favorite first. We have the rushing offensive ranking, passing offensive ranking, the rushing defensive ranking, the passing. What I did is kind of highlighted if they're in the top 25, that we know we got a premium offense. If the defense is in the top 25, then we know we get a premium defense in the red. So again, it's kind of a way that we can identify some potential blowouts. In the Vegas line, it's going to reflect those, as you can see here, 31, 24, 34, 26, that kind of thing. So again, we have, and then if you notice, these are all the underdogs, and not a lot here. Not a lot on the offensive side, not a lot on the defensive side. So again, this kind of correlates into the Vegas data. The Vegas data is gonna show us where we need to go as far as the matchups go, as far as the projections go. And here are the differentials: passing, the favorites, rushing differential, the favorites, passing differential, and then the underdog. You notice here, not a lot there on the underdog side, outside of our big game in TCU and Texas Tech. So let's get into it. Let's go ahead and sort by the total, because that's going to kind of give us an indication of where we want to go. All right, so the biggest game on the board this week as far as early slate goes, TCU Texas Tech. TCU's 7-point favorite at the time we're recording the video. The total is over 80. It did cross 80. It's at 80.5. Projected total of around 44-37, 44-36. This game could get crazy, okay? Now, here's the thing. Everybody in the world is going to be on this game. Everybody's going to be on Trevon Boykin, the quarterback from TCU. They're going to be on Aaron Green, the running back from TCU. I mean, there's really no way. I mean, you're going to have people on Mahomes, on Grant. It's just Lauderdale. So here's the thing. Everyone's going to be on these guys. What do? You got to play them in cash games for sure. Heads up 50-50. We don't care about ownership rate. We want the best players possible. Here's the thing in tournaments. I think you can still you got to pick your spots. It's really hard to get away from a guy like Trevon Boykin when you look at a 50 or 60 potential, he could put up 50 or 60. Do you care if he's 25% owned? That's the magic question, because there are some other quarterbacks that are going to be out there. And, I think it's one of those situations where if I'm running multiple entries in a tournament, then I know I'm going to at least want some shares of Boykin. But if I'm only going with one entry in a tournament and I know I've got to fade the public, that's what I'm going to have to do. And I'm going to have to say, you know what? I just can't use Boykin in a tournament in a one shot only deal. I've got to go with another player, whether it's Mahomes, whether it's Matt Johnson, whether it's Seth Russell, whether it's Brandon Doty, whether it's Jared Goff, and then we're actually going to talk about a couple other guys that could potentially be a very interesting tournament play at the quarterback position. So the narrative on the TCU Texas is, look, absolutely, Boykin's going to be the guy you're going to have to try to fit in your heads ups and your 50-50s. I still think you can go with Mahomes and not have a problem. Look, this TCU defense has suffered a lot of suspensions, a lot of injuries, even came out this week. A couple more guys kicked off the team. Texas Tech's going to put up their points. Don't be surprised if this game is in the hundreds. It's going to be that crazy. I'm absolutely going to want to sit down and watch this game or record this game and watch it after. But it's must-watch TV, college fantasy football. Here's a second game that you guys definitely want to be on, and that's Bowling Green Purdue. Now, I've been on Bowling Green all year. I had them in my preview videos. I told you about the quarterback coming back off the injury. We got him super cheap at the beginning of the season. We're still getting them cheap. And they got Purdue with a cheap line here of a less than a field goal with a total of 75. Again, crazy, crazy game here. Not a lot on the Purdue side. You see here on the offensive side, look, Purdue is terrible on offense. Here's the thing, though. Bowling Green's terrible on defense, so there's going to be some value potentially on some Purdue guys that we can talk about. But absolutely, you're going to need to have some of this Bowling Green air attack for sure. And even the rushing attack, you're going to want a little bit of too. But I think obviously on the passing side, this is an elite passing offense in a very prime situation. So again, we saw what happened last week with Matt Johnson and Roger Lewis, gave those guys out. Didn't spread the ball around as much as we had liked, because we did give out the other two guys as well on Bowling Green. So let's take a look at that, and maybe this is the week. But again, the most popular pairs are going to be Boykin and Josh Doxson, Matt Johnson and Roger Lewis, and Seth Russell, Corey Coleman. Those are going to be the three most popular guys. Secondary guys probably going to be Texas Tech is going to be Mahomes and probably Grant. But I think the top three, obviously TCU, Bowling Green, and Baylor, you're going to want to pair up a quarterback with the top wide receiver and make your rosters off of that. So we got Bowling Green, Purdue. We talked about that. We got Baylor, Rice. Now the line is 34. Here's the thing about Baylor. Now we've been shying away from some of these big lines, and it's kind of burned me. They're not pulling the players. TCU's not pulling their guys. Baylor's not pulling their guys unless the game just gets ridiculously out of hand. Both teams' defenses, TCU and Baylor, both teams' defenses aren't great right now. And so they're giving up a lot more points than what's to be expected. So even though they're putting up points on offense, they're giving up points on defense. And that's great for fantasy because the starters are being left in the game and they're producing. So again, Baylor has the number one projected team total of the week at 54.5. So, there's also going to be opportunity here for some of the Rice players. And we'll talk about that too, because, there's a good chance that they're going to put up more than 20 points in this game. Even though, and that's going to be in the air, not on the ground. Because we see here that Baylor's run defense is elite. And when you're throwing the ball around like Baylor, pretty much you got to throw the ball to respond. So we got a top-notch Baylor offense that's going to be able to put up 50, 60 points this week. At least they should be able to. And, we might have some potential for some usage on the Rice side because the values are going to be so cheap. So we'll talk about that. Might be a similar situation to what we had last week when we recommended Penny Hart from Georgia State. There's a wide receiver from Rice I think is in a really good spot. Western Kentucky, Miami of Ohio. Gotta love these conference matchups where there's literally no defense. Western Kentucky is a pretty big favorite here. 20.5 or a 3-touchdown favorite. We know they're not going to yank any of their guys. They're going to keep hustling. The only thing you got to worry about is if they go to the run game instead of the pass game. We know that Western Kentucky's got an elite passing game. And we see here that Miami of Ohio is one of the worst passing defenses in the entire country, also one of the worst rushing defenses in the entire country. And really, they can't do a whole lot on offense. So here's the thing. This game, it wouldn't shock me if Western Kentucky actually blows them out by more than 21. I think this game could get seriously out of hand. And I think Western Kentucky could really drop the hammer on Miami of Ohio. So, again, we're going to want a piece. Dangerfield's not going to be in play. He's still not 100% healthy. But we're definitely going to want a piece of the offensive players on Western Kentucky. Ohio State, Western Michigan. Ohio State kind of sleptwalked through their game last week. They get another cupcake. And Ohio State's schedule outside of the conference has been pretty brutal. Not a lot of motivation in this game. 31 total, 31.5 line, 61 total. Obviously projected a blowout. Huge edge, obviously, on the run game here. Now, here's the thing. Western Kentucky is one of 3 underdogs that has a top 25 projected passing offense. Western Michigan has some guys, especially 2 wide receivers, that can do some damage. Are they going to be able to do any damage this week? I don't know. It's going to make a very interesting tournament play. I think the Western Michigan wide receivers, I wouldn't go anywhere near the quarterback only because I just don't know what's going to happen there. But a couple wide receivers on Western Michigan, I think if you're looking at tournaments, that definitely, these guys get a lot of volume. They get a lot of targets. And Western Michigan is probably going to have to throw the ball. And they do have a pretty good passing offense. So it's something that you guys want to consider. Oklahoma State, Texas. Now, the game is a low total. It's a low line as far as, a field goal, 61 total. Kind of game that we like the passing offense on Oklahoma State. The thing about it here is with so many elite quarterbacks this week, it's really hard for me to look at a guy like Mason Rudolph and really feel comfortable using him when there's so many other players that I can take advantage of. Now, the Texas quarterback is somebody who, we saw him do some damage last week. It was cheap salary as a rushing quarterback. I'm just not really on this game all that much. And maybe I should be on the Texas quarterback. Maybe that's something I'm overlooking. Is this game going to be overlooked in a tournament because everyone's going to be on the big 3, TCU, Bowling Green, Baylor, and even Western Kentucky? Possibly, but I just can't get away from the elite matchups that these other teams have. And again, as far as Oklahoma State goes, I'm not thrilled about their quarterback situation, even though Rudolph is highly touted. I think this is an interesting spot here for Texas. Cal, Washington. We love our Pac-12, and this, you look at the total in this game at 61. You kind of think maybe this game is a little bit low. Cal's offense is still great. They still throw the ball around a ton, but it's not been necessarily like that prolific offense that we've been used to seeing. So when I look at this, when I look at Goff, he's a guy that I'm looking at more for tournaments as far as just lack of ownership being there. This is a pretty good top, a really top passing offense in Washington is very bad on the passing defense. So more of a tournament play for me as far as a quarterback from California, and then a wide receiver, and then we can even talk about the running back situation. But for me, these are more tournament plays. They're more secondary tier plays for me. Notre Dame, UMass. Now this game is a FanDuel only game, and I forgot to mention that the Western Kentucky game is FanDuel only as well. So Notre Dame, UMass. With Notre Dame's quarterback situation, I think they're going to play. It's really going to be a situation where UMass's defense is not good. Colorado ran the ball up and down the field all over them. So, Procise is a guy that I think we can look at. And then also William Fuller, who's pretty much the number one guy, clearly the number one guy on Notre Dame in the passing game. I'm not going anywhere near the quarterback for Notre Dame. Just too much of an unknown for me. But I think the 2 key guys for Notre Dame, C.J. Procise, running back, and also William Fuller, the wide receiver. Normally, I am on Tajay Sharp as my UMass guy, but I can't be on him in this spot. I think that UMass is going to get destroyed. in this situation. I think Notre Dame could really, really, the line is 29. That's a high line. I'm not saying that I would lay 4 touchdowns plus, but Notre Dame is probably going to wax UMass in this spot, and the game could get pretty ugly. West Virginia, Maryland, we got a line of 17. West Virginia has not really played anybody so far this year. Maryland's not that great. Total 57. So we got a projected game score of 37-20. There is some value on West Virginia as far as the run game goes. We'll talk about Smallwood. His salary is pretty cheap, and he's been a pretty good dollar per point guy. So that's something we can definitely look at. Pretty good passing offense, but again, they haven't really played anybody, so I'm not sure how confident I feel like in the quarterback. Again, there's just too many other options, but I do like one of the wide receivers for West Virginia. West Virginia's prices are pretty affordable, so that's really where we're coming in as far as value goes. Georgia Tech, Duke. Georgia Tech -8, 56 total. Georgia Tech, we know they're going to run the ball 800 times a game. Duke also has a running quarterback in Cirque that we have recommended and used. But again, we've got Georgia Tech, who's a top 5 rushing offense, going against one of the worst rushing defenses in college football. So we have to look at the lead running back on Georgia Tech, and that's Patrick Scott. So he'll be on the recommendation. Indiana, Wake Forest. It is a close game. It's -3.5. It's a 56 total. Our guy here is no doubt is Jordan Howard. I talked about him in my preseason videos as far as the sleeper goes. He's done nothing to disappoint. He's taken over for Tevin Coleman, and he's he's done some amazing things. He's probably one of the number 1 cash game running backs that you want to use every week. So we had a huge differential on the run game. We know Indiana is going to run all day long against Wake Forest. So absolutely, Jordan Howard's probably going to be, the number 1 or number 2 running back that we're going to want to use this week outside of Leonard Fournette. Michigan State, Central Michigan, another big number in a Michigan State game, almost a 4 touchdown, 54 total. So we got about a 40-34 implied score. Look, I wasn't on Michigan State last week because of the blowout factor. It's really hard to get a gauge on Michigan State. We're starting to get a little bit. The wide receiver blew up last week, and that was a guy who had just missed my ranks. I feel bad about that. It's looking like Michigan State's not really pulling their guys. They're going to put up the points, and let's not really worry about whether or not they're going to pull their starters. They don't necessarily get out to like 31-0 leads. They kind of just grind it out and then blow you out as the game goes on. So definitely Michigan State guys are in play this week. Virginia Tech, East Carolina. Normally we'd be on East Carolina, a prolific offense, but a lot of injuries on East Carolina, and Virginia Tech is one of the best defensive squads in the country. We got VTech favored by a little bit more than a touchdown with a total of 54. There's really no value here. I cannot use anybody on East Carolina because, again, we've got an elite unit on the other side. So just not a lot of value here. I know some people are on the quarterback for Virginia Tech because he's super cheap, but he's just not a guy that made my ranks this week. Florida, Tennessee, I don't ever take anybody from Florida or playing Florida because their defense is elite. It's basically a pick-em game, 24-24. Again, we got an elite defense. To me, this game goes under the total. I know it's really hard for an SEC game to go under 48, but I think in this spot, it wouldn't shock me. You look at some of the scores that Florida puts up, it's brutal. So I think this game, from a handicapping perspective, could go way under the total of 48. So that's my outlook on Florida, Tennessee. Boston College, Northern Illinois is a game that is kind of ugly. Boston College plays ugly football, and it's kind of a weird matchup. 4.5 is the line. They get a low total of 47, so there's just not a lot here. But we do have an angle with BC in the fact that they've got a new starting quarterback who is minimum salary, and that's something that we're going to be able to take advantage of. LSU Syracuse. In this spot, really, it's one guy. It's a guy that we talked about last week who was my number 1 running back, and he delivered. Leonard Fournette, I would expect, is going to have another monster game. LSU is an elite rushing offense. Syracuse is a middle of the road defense, but again, it's not going to matter because they're absolutely going to just run the ball down their throat and dominate the line of scrimmage. So absolutely got to have Leonard Fournette in your lineups this week. Michigan BYU is the last game that we have with the lowest total of 44.5. 5.5 line. Again, no value here at all. I don't like anybody in this game. I can't recommend anybody in this game. There's just too many other big matchups and big scoring projected totals. So I'm fading the entire Michigan BYU. Let's get into the player picks. I talked a lot about these guys already, but let's go over the salaries by site. Number one guy on the board is no doubt about it, Trevin Boykin, TCU. He's 10.3 on both sites, so you get, it's a little bit tougher to fit him in on DraftKings because you get the double quarterback, so you got to remember that. But number one cash game quarterback by far on FanDuel, and Seth Russell would be the guy that's right behind him playing this week. The thing about Russell is, you got to love the ability of Boykin to run. Again, with Mahomes, I'm always going to lean towards a running quarterback because of the upside and the potential. So, Boykin and Mahomes are guys that I lean towards. Russell, more of a passer. Johnson, Doty, those guys are more passers. Johnson's price on FanDuel at 8,600 is so attractive, and we saw what he did last week. So I think he really jumps out to me as a guy that I know I'm going to have a lot of exposure to. Mahomes is more of a tournament play for me. I'm basically going to be, if I'm looking to fade Boykin, I don't want shares of Boykin. I'm going to probably go with Mahomes in that game. Again, I could go with Russell, but I think Mahomes' ownership is going to be a lot lower, and I'm getting him at $1,100 less. So again, Mahomes would be the play for me there. If I'm looking at Mahomes, Russell, if I'm just looking at a tournament play, I got to go against the grain. I'm looking at saving a little bit of money. And I'm looking at ownership. I think Mahomes is a guy you absolutely got to look at there, especially at 8,700 on FanDuel. I have Doty on this list. He is 9,600. I think he's a little bit expensive. But Miami of Ohio's defense is so bad that, does Doty put up 5-6 touchdowns? I'm not sure if they're going to run the ball a whole lot. Furby looked pretty good last week. I had him. And they're going to run a little bit, but I think this is absolutely going to be an air attack, and Doty's going to be throwing the ball all over the place. So at 9,600, a little bit too expensive for me. That's why he's not up in the top tier. I did talk about Jared Goff. Again, he's strictly a tournament play for me because the matchup is so extreme. And again, I'm looking at lower ownership. Let's say Boykin and Russell maybe have good games, but not great games. Goff might be a guy that you can look at. Now, the two wild cards of the week at quarterback are David Blow from Purdue and Jeff Smith from BC. Now, David Blow takes over for Austin Appleby, and he's super cheap on FanDuel. So, again, we're looking at wild card only tournament play for me is because of the game that he's in. With that high projected total of the game going back and forth, you've got to really look at him and say, hey, just the opportunity alone is gonna give me a floor where I can use him. Now, it's a high risk play. It could absolutely blow up in your face, but at $5,300 to get a starting quarterback in a game with an extremely high projected total is something that's pretty special. So again, somebody to definitely consider. And then the extreme wild card of the week is Jeff Smith from Boston College, all the way down at 4,500. Now BC's favored in the game, and Smith can run and throw. And at 4,500, you almost have to take a look at him again. And I know there's going to be guys that are going to use him in cash games just because they feel like they can. If you can look and get a Fournette and a Howard in your lineup along with a guy like Smith, I can understand why you would want to use that in a cash game. It might be a little bit too extreme for my taste, but again, I can see why guys would justify it. And at 4,500, it's crazy because he really doesn't have to do much just to hit value. And at 4,500 to get a starting quarterback that's favored, especially a kid that runs, is insane. All right, let's go jump over to the running backs. And again, we talked about Leonard Fournette last week, number one running back on the board, and pretty much a number one running back here. And I think it's really between him and Jordan Howard. You look at Jordan Howard on FanDuel, he's 8,500, he's 8,400 on DK. We get a huge bump of Leonard Fournette on DK at 9,700. So I'm not sure, because I've got double quarterback, double flex, it's really tough to get Fournette in. I'm going to have to go extreme value on a lot of other guys. And there's certainly some guys out there you can do it with, but he's so much more attractive on FanDuel at 8,700. Definitely like him there. You're going to want a piece of Baylor. Linwood's a guy. Look, he's certainly more attractive on DraftKings at 7,200. At 8,500, I don't mind him because he does get the majority, but they still got other guys there. They still kind of spread the ball around a little bit. Again, more of a DraftKings play for me for sure. Jordan Howard, I don't care what site, how much money, you got to play him. He's the bell cow for Indiana, and you got to love the spot there. We talked about the Notre Dame running game against UMass, so ProSice is the guy there, 8,400 again. That game is not on DK, so you can't use him there. Aaron Green's a guy that I think is more of a tournament play for me in terms of, so many people are going to be on Boykin in the passing game that I think Aaron Green could be a little bit overlooked this week. I haven't really used him all year. He's at 8,300 on FanDuel. He's at 7,900 on DraftKings. But this might be, if they're going to put up 60 points and they're going to score 8-9 touchdowns, Green is going to get 2 or 3. And if that's the case, you absolutely need to have him in. So I think, again, more of a tournament play for me. Because I'm just not sure, when I look at Howard and I look at Fournette, I know what I'm getting. With Green, there's a lot of variance there. DeAndre Furby, we used him last week. Now we get a huge salary bump up to 7,800. I don't know how much Western Kentucky's going to run, but he's going to get the ball inside the 20. He's a big kid. He's thick. He can get the ball in the end zone. So, again, for me, probably more of a tournament play, even though he is 7,800. I just don't know how many red zone opportunities he's going to get. The guy that you got to love here is Patrick Scobb, Georgia Tech. He's sitting there at $5,800. They're going to run wild in that game. Now, the thing is they do run a lot of guys, but at $5,800, for me, I know I'm going to get volume out of Scobb, and so if I want to pair Scobb with like a Howard or a Fournette, I feel completely comfortable because I need to get some salary relief. If you notice, he's more expensive on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel. Wendell Smallwood from West Virginia. I do want a piece of the West Virginia run game, and I think that's the guy that you're going to want to lean towards. They got some other guys in the backfield, but Smallwood, when you look at a dollar per point basis, Smallwood's been really productive, especially on DraftKings where you get him at less than 5K and you got double flex. So he's absolutely attractive there. More of a wild card. These are kind of wild card guys, and you start dipping down. These are all GPP plays for me. Markel Jones for Purdue, again, just the high projected total in that game. Purdue's offense is not great. It's not very good at all. But when you're going against a terrible defense and your prices are cheap and you got to find value somewhere, that's where you're going to find value in college fantasy football. So you get them at 4,400 on DraftKings and sub 5 as a running back on FanDuel is something that's very hard to overlook. This is a situation you're going to want to take it. Definitely keep an eye on the California running back situation. They don't run the ball a whole lot. This is mostly a passing offense. Vic and Ware is a guy that is potentially going to start over Daniel Lasco. They've got another guy in Khalfani Muhammad. But again, at 4,500 on FanDuel and 4,500 on DraftKings, you're getting a guy who's going to get volume in a game that should have a lot of points. He may not go crazy he might only get 10 or 15 carries because they throw the ball so much. But if they're going to put up a lot of points and the game's going to be, it's against Washington, who's not very good, you gotta look at him getting hitting value, and he doesn't need a lot to hit value. The last wild card for me as far as tournament, Travis Green from Bowling Green. We talked about the running backs last week, and look, everything was Matt Johnson and Roger Lewis last week. But you've got this crazy high total game that's going to go back and forth. These Bowling Green games are in the 40s. They go back and forth. They're not going to blow anybody out, so to speak, because the defense stinks. And he's over on DraftKings at 4,900. So you got the double flex. You got to save money. That's a guy, that, again, if you're going tournament and you're going cheap at the running back position and you're going to want to load up at the wide receiver position because you want the ceiling, that's kind of the strategy that you want to go with. So let's hop over to wide receiver. And again, more plays this week because there's more games on the slate. So just keep that in mind. So Josh Doxson, chimes in here from TCU, the #1 wide receiver. I have not really used Doxson because he hasn't been 100%. and the spots haven't been great, and they do spread the ball around a little bit. But I think this is the spot where Doxson's going to break out, and he could go nuts. And Doxson's the kind of guy, he can put up 200 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns and like 12 catches. He can go absolutely ballistic. This could be the week that he does it. 8,400 on FanDuel, so he is pricey there. He's kind of on the threshold of what I want to be. 7,500 on DraftKings is certainly much more attractive. So you got that Boykin Doxson stack, which is going to look real nice. Corey Coleman's a beast, number 1 wide receiver from Baylor. Get him a little bit cheaper on FanDuel, so it's a little bit more. You look at $1,000 difference between Coleman and on DraftKings, towards Doxson, whereas you got a $200 difference on FanDuel. So you're certainly getting more value with Coleman on FanDuel. And again, a Russell Coleman stack is almost, you have to pair those guys if you're going to use them. William Fuller, number 1 wide receiver from Notre Dame. Most of the volume is going to go through him. That quarterback is going to rely on Fuller. So that's a guy, look, at 7,900, it's probably a little bit too expensive for me to try to fit in a cash game, depending on what direction I want to go. He might not have the monster upside this week because I think they're going to want to run the ball a lot too. But he's certainly a guy that you can roll out there and feel pretty confident in either cash or in tournaments. Roger Lewis was a guy that broke out last week and went nuts. He did the same thing last year. 7,600 on FanDuel, 7,000 on 7,700 on DraftKings. Absolute must play in every single format. I know he's going to be heavily owned in tournaments, so just be aware. It's really hard to get off him though at the production that he can put up. I mean, again, we're not looking for what he did last week. We know that's probably not repeatable, but his price point is just ridiculous. Jakeem Grant, number 1 wide receiver for Texas Tech. Again, I talked about Texas Tech being more, to me, of a tournament play because I don't know if the ownership percentage is going to be as high as some of these other players. So Grant, to me, is more of a tournament play where I'm taking advantage of that ownership. Aaron Burbridge was a guy that went nuts last week. You got him back here again this week. You get him on FanDuel. To me, perfect cash game wide receiver because on FanDuel, I'm looking at wide receivers less than 7. And I get Grant, I get Burbridge, I get Lee, I get Listenby at 6. So I'm looking at guys that just really want consistent volume and not volatility. So Burbridge would be a guy that absolutely is somebody I'm looking at for cash game wide receiver. Jay Lee from Baylor, they're number 2. He's only 6,000 on DraftKings, so he's a really nice cash game wide receiver for me over on DraftKings. So you see the difference between Grant and Burbridge sitting at 7,400, and Lee is all the way down at 6K. So definitely like him there. Kenny Lawler is a guy who definitely can frustrate you. This is more of a tournament play for me in terms of if I'm going to use Goff, probably on DraftKings because I got the 2 quarterbacks. If Goff is my second quarterback, I'm going to look at Lawler and pair him. Again, we've got 5. You got 3 wide receivers, 2 flexes that you want to look at there. So again, that's a guy in that situation you can fit him in. Tywan Taylor is a wide receiver I'm going to want for Western Kentucky at 6,100 on FanDuel. A perfect cash game wide receiver for me. Listenby is the number 2 wide receiver for TCU. You get him very cheap on DraftKings at 5K, 6K over on FanDuel. Again, I like wide receivers in that 6, 7K range. High totals, solid number 2 wide receivers or number 1 wide receivers with some upside. So he fits the profile for me. If you want to use him in a tournament, I think you got to go with Doxson, with Listenby, and with Boykin, and just stack the entire aerial attack. Here's some guys that are flyers. Daniel Braverman's a guy who gets a ridiculous amount of volume. We talked about Western Michigan's passing offense being good. Now they're running up against an elite team this week. But, is that team going to be motivated late in the game to stop them? And Western Michigan's going to want to throw because they're down. So to me, Braverman at 6,000 is a guy you absolutely want to consider on FanDuel. He's not somebody I would consider on DraftKings. So I just left the salary in there to show you. I can't use Braverman at 7,100. It's just not somebody that I can use. So we'll take him out. I just wanted to leave the salary in there for you. Shelton Gibson. Now we want a piece of this West Virginia offense. He's 4,400 on DraftKings, so we absolutely get the value there. 5,300 on FanDuel. They've been spreading the ball around a little bit. He's a guy that if you want to pick a guy from West Virginia and you like them in a tournament, I think that's somebody that you can save some money on. I would not feel comfortable with him in a cash game because I don't feel like he's guaranteed the volume. The cheapy wide receiver of the week, we hit with Penny Hart last week at Georgia State, coming back with Dennis Parks of Rice at 4,500 on FanDuel, 4,800 on DraftKings. Look, this guy's got a ridiculous point per game. Now, they're going up against Baylor. They're 34-point, 35-point, underdog. But they're going to put up points. Rice is going to score 20, 24 points, and Parks is going to get volume. And that's all we really care about. So for me, Parks is a guy I can throw into a cash game and feel pretty comfortable about because he's got a floor. Is he going to go nuts? Is he going to score 4 touchdowns? No. But he's going to get an insane amount of targets, insane amount of receptions. And on a site like DraftKings where I'm getting 1-point PPR, that's something I want to lock in. And on FanDuel, when I'm getting him at 4,500, when the next guy that I'm even recommending is all the way up at 5,300, I think that's somebody that you have to consider. All right, guys, that's good. That's the breakdown for the college fantasy football slate, the early slate on Saturday for DraftKings and FanDuel. Hope you enjoyed it, the detailed breakdown that I go through every week. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel on YouTube, the RotoCurve channel. And again, as I mentioned in the beginning, please go to rotocurve.com and sign up for a free account. All of our content is free. Videos, chat, forum, exclusive free roll promotions that we are doing with several sites. So you can absolutely take advantage of those as well. And again, all the great content that we have with all the great guys over on the RotoCurve team. Go ahead and sign up, rotocurve.com. Hope you have a great, successful college fantasy football Saturday. Let's win some money this week. Take care, guys.